Hey Diego, welcome to Becoming Rare.
Nabi, thank you so much for having me.
Sure, it's great to have you here, and let us take us a bit where you are right now, and what are you doing right now?
Yeah, so right now I currently live in San Antonio, Texas. Currently working for a club. It's a small to medium club called San Antonio Athletic FC. I was fortunate to take the position as just the director of just the operations, the soccer operations side, and yeah, I guess I'm giving back to the community that has helped me, um, travel, that has helped me, play the sport that I love, that has helped me, um, essentially connect with so many amazing people. So, that's what I'm doing, current to date.
Nice. How long you are right now in Texas?
So I've been, here in a month or a couple of months. I will be turning. It will be turning a year here in San Antonio. So it's crazy because life has gone so fast, and especially because um this year marked the year where I made my transition from post playing, right? I was,
Mm,
playing, you know, uh competitively in Czechia, and then, I kind of had to figure out what were the next steps. So, I got the opportunity to come here to San Antonio to really establish myself, not just as a footballer, but, just something outside of that sphere. And it's just crazy that it's just, a year has gone by, and that, I'm in the position that I'm at. But I'm, nonetheless, I'm grateful that I've been able to make this smooth transaction, because I know, talking to friends and just knowing the experience of a person, leaving the sport is typically very difficult, right? Just because of, whether it be an identity crisis, whether it be
mm.
seeking employment afterwards, it's always a difficult transition, to say the least. But mine was excellent. I had the support of, my family and the friends that live here. So um, yeah, just so happy to call San Antonio my home. And it's only been a year, but I've done already so much, and hopefully I'm excited to see what comes to be in the next couple of years for sure.
Very interesting. Let's go a bit earlier
Mhm.
before we like, where did football start for you? Like, at which age, and what was like the first contact?
Yeah. Well, football started for me when I was about 5 years old. So at this point, I was living in Madrid, Spain, and I was going to a school where I had met one of my best friends back then, and I remember him telling me that he was joining, I guess, the club, or the football club within the school. And I guess something about that really excited me. I think it was the fact that I was going to be playing with my friend, right? And I don't remember how the first game really went down, but I do remember how I felt afterwards, and it was just exhilarating. How happy I felt to have played. Especially with one of my really good friends back then. And that's where my passion for the sport really started. And then from there, was playing in a club in Madrid called Santa Eugenia. And back then, right now, I mean, if you see the fields, and the stadium is fantastic. What they did there with, they put in, AstroTurf, and it looks very, very professional. But back then it was just sand. It was a sand pitch. So we were playing out there, and those are like my early memories of football. And it was, when you're young like that, it's just very fun. And especially when you have someone that you can share it with, like the friend that I had. I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, I even remember, now that I think about it, I was playing for that club, and I remember one of these days I scored, like, four, I think it was 3 or 4 goals. And
Mm.
coming out of the stadium, I could just I could just see all the parents, that were watching, just giving me praises, and it was the first time I kind of had I was validated per se, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
felt that external validation from other people based on my performance, and it was just an unbelievable feeling, right? I was like, oh my God, like I'm the talk of the match, and that was just one of the more exciting memories that I have, and yeah, I mean I've just been playing, I've been playing since then. I really did start taking, I guess, my career seriously when I went to um when I started living in Hong Kong. So I made a couple of transitions, where I was living in Madrid. I was in the US for a little while. I was in New York City for a couple of years, moved back to Madrid. Um, and then when had the opportunity to live in Hong Kong, I was about 11 or 12. And just based on, I guess, the level of play, as well as where I was at in my life, I had decided, I think then I decided that I wanted to be a professional.
Mm.
Um, and it completely changed, I guess, how I saw the sport, because it was more than just going out there having a kickabout, which is always, I always love to do that, but it was more a mindset of, okay, well, I have to do everything that it takes to make it there, right? So whether it is, get into all the practices, whether it be for my school team and the club that I was at, um, being able to expose myself to the game. Of course, like everyone else at that age, from 11 to 17, you make a lot of mistakes, and sometimes you're not as um, focused as as one might want now looking back, right? But um now that I think of it, I did everything that I could to get myself in the best position to play. So that, that age period was where, yeah, I said, you know what, I want to give it a shot. Um, and I had a lot of success in Hong Kong for
And
sure.
how was it like for you also, like the culture difference? I mean, you told right now like you were in very early years, you were exposed to the US culture, the Spain culture, now Hong Kong. Like I have a friend, he's from Hong Kong and he say that it's completely different.
Yeah.
And like how was it for you to like how was it with language? How did you manage this in so early years?
Um, Definitely the culture, between, let's say, all the three, uh, nations that I've listed, all the countries, they're completely different, right? Spain, the US, and of course, Hong Kong, sorry, which is its own um, government. However, because I was so young, um, I really didn't realize how different it was, if that makes sense. I was kind of living my day to day, and the transition for me going from Spain to Hong Kong was quite seamless. I mean, in Hong Kong, most of the people that live there, they're going to speak more than one language, right? It's going to be Cantonese, and most of them speak, English. So the transition wasn't as difficult, but it was still a culture shock. I remember, my final years there in Hong Kong, walking the streets, just like I typically do. Um, and I realized how different, life is here compared to other places. And, it was definitely, I think perhaps by when I was 17, 18, it was definitely a big shock to me to say, or to realize that, the places that I've been living in are so different. Yet I didn't really realize that when I was younger. And I'm so thankful that, I got to experience those things, because definitely, travel and being in different cultures teaches you a lot, especially the management of people, because
Mm,
people come with different notions of how to do certain things, or why they do them based on their culture background. And I mean, get alone, I mean, in Hong Kong, you're gonna find, um, not just Chinese people, but it's, of course, you have your people that are from Europe, right? Mainly British. Then you have Nepalese, Indian, Pakistan. You have Filipino. You have Thai. You have Japanese. You have a lot of cultures. There that you know are just wonderful to see. It's like a melting pot. I mean, I always say that Hong Kong, it's like is the New York of Asia per se, right?
Mm,
Where, it's 8 million people, skyscrapers everywhere, and just a plethora of cultures. And that environment, as well as the environment in Madrid and in New York, really taught me um, you know, how to, I guess, manage people, how to talk to them, what some of the I guess subconscious decisions that people make based on their cultures. I think those are things that I'm really glad and I'm really grateful that I got to experience because these things they don't teach you in a
mm,
book, right? I mean, especially with let's say, the background that you have with psychology, definitely those are notions that, you're probably learning, but living it in vivo, I mean, it's a whole different ballgame. Um, but nonetheless, it was fantastic feeling. I've made so many great friends from all over the world, and it's fantastic that we're even doing this, right? We're
mm,
out in San Antonio, you're in Madrid, and we're connecting this way. And that's a consequence of, all the networks that I've made around the world, thanks to my upbringing. So it was definitely different, in terms of, day-to-day things, food, decisions that we had to make, holidays, language barrier, of course, which
mm.
I didn't get so much of a language barrier until I was a little bit older. Um, but all those things were definitely much much different to, let's say, the European culture as opposed to the American culture. But nonetheless, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. How was like the regarding football? How was like did you I mean you were very young with 11, but did you understood okay, they play a bit different or they don't focus on these things or they are really good at these? And like what I have also in my mind, because like the friend from mine, he's from Hong Kong, he's very disciplined. And
Hmm.
like that the discipline is like different, for example, like in Hong Kong. Did you felt it also that you learned, okay, what is really to be disciplined?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I would say that the people that that are my friends, that are from Hong Kong, they and it comes down to, the pressure that they have, culturally, like, with families, pressuring them to be the best version of themselves. But I definitely do see that people in Hong Kong are very much disciplined. They're in their tunnel vision. But in regards to football, the real difference that I did see is it's more or less plain style. In Spain, when you play football, it's first and foremost, right? It's the top sport, right? Everyone plays it, right?
Mm,
You're playing it in the streets with your friends. You're playing it in club. You're playing it everywhere, and everyone virtually, has had an experience playing it. That's for sure. And the notion of the typical tiki taka in football is very much more renowned in Spain than it is in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, it was, we I had a my first coach in Hong Kong was Serbian. So, his I guess his methodology of football was just a little bit different. He was still very much possession based, but it was a little bit more direct per se and a
mm,
little more physical. Um, so, me having the qualities that I had in, with my background in Spain, I guess gave me a competitive advantage, where, you know, in the cases that, let's say players like to go more direct, I was able to control the game a little bit better with just the technical aspect, being able to see passes perhaps that my teammates couldn't see, and putting myself in a situation to be successful, which is, I guess me realizing that was one of the reasons as to why I said, I have a shot. I have a
Mm,
shot at being professional. I'm seeing certain things that perhaps other kids around me aren't. Um, so that was definitely, a big revelation for me in terms of football. In terms of the discipline side, I mean, this is something that, and as we continue talking, this is something that I have learned over the years. And, the sport, for you to be a sportsman, discipline is by far one of the most, perhaps the most helpful and the most important aspects, because it's once you start getting a little bit older, you get to higher levels. It's about, okay, you have to eat certain things, and not necessarily the things that you might think are good, but are things that work well with your body. Then you have to sleep a certain amount because, typically when you sleep, 5 to 6 hours, you're not going to feel as refreshed, or you're not going to make good decisions on the field. Um, it's about load management as well. It's like, okay, I'm
mm,
not going to go out, I'm not going to do a David Goggins and run, 8 miles or 10 miles before going to training, right? It's load management. So, that's something that, I had to learn pretty quickly when I started playing very competitively. Is like, I was used to be someone that loves to go to the gym, loves to be active, doing this, that, and the other. But one of the best things that you can do, especially when you're in season, it's really prioritizing recovery. And
mm,
it's really saying, I need to be disciplined enough for me to stay put, and me do some more recovery modalities than go to the gym, or, do that and the other, which, there's a time and place for the gym and to be active. But it's really, it really comes down to prioritizing, yourself, your health, so you can be your best at the game. So that level of discipline is definitely something that I did learn. Um, Anecdotally, right, based on my mistakes that I've made,
mm,
friends that I've spoken with, nowadays, as you may know, podcasts are, the modern books, so psychology, podcasts, science podcasts that really help propel the space of sports performance, are something that I love to indulge.
mm,
Um, and that has helped me, right? And that's been applicable. So definitely, just to go back to the discipline part, yeah, I learned a little bit of discipline based on, the culture that I was in back in Hong Kong. But the football, or sport for that matter, has really given me that notion of being prepared, and just being disciplined with everything that I do. Of course, I'm not a perfect.
mm,
I've had nights where I've only slept for 3 hours before a game just because of the jitters, or I've made bad decisions. I haven't eaten the right foods, once in a while. But, if you look at the long term, I guess, the long term plans, or the long term actions, I think that, um, yeah, I've been the most disciplined, especially the last couple of years.
mm. Wow. What would you say, like regarding the discipline and regarding all the things we talked about? There's also like the topic of mental strength.
Mhm.
How would you describe mental strength or define mental strength?
I would define mental strength as, a little bit tied into mental resilience, where it's the ability to stay composed and to make clear, sound decisions under situations of stress. So, definitely in the sporting situation, you're always going to find yourself in difficult situations, whether it be in the field or out the field.
Mm,
Um, so I guess the ability to consistently make sound decisions that will help you and the people around you, in those types of situations, I think are is what I would describe mental strength. And
Mm,
definitely, going back to sport, the sporting context, you're always going to find situations where you're you're going to be tested in this physically, mentally, in all those aspects. I mean, I can just remember how perhaps, you know, when I was in Czechia, one of my tests were, the fact that I was in a completely, different environment where um you didn't really see people like myself.
mm,
Where it was a completely different language, and not a lot of people spoke the language that I spoke. So that was a challenge of itself. And even at times where maybe, in training, things are not going as well, I have to communicate with my teammates, right? We get frustrated. Those situations are definitely tests, because it's definitely hard situations to overcome, whenever you're in them. And, I had moments where, after the trainings or games that I haven't played so well, or perhaps that I haven't been able to feel like I'm in the team. I've gotten down, I've broken down, but it's about really acknowledging that the situation is difficult as it is, that it's
mm,
not really um my fault. And as an athlete, you just have to do the best to get the team to win, and I have to do my best to put myself in a position to succeed, and that is, of course, to get you know a large amount of minutes in the field. It is being able to stay healthy, right, free from
mm,
injury. But yeah, in the sporting context, there's definitely going to be situations where um you're going to be tested, whether it is team, like, being with the team, you know, decisions that are made in the field, like, like quick decisions, like, referee giving you a bad call, right? Fans booing at you.
mm.
Um, teammates, saying things behind your back, right? Um,
How would you deal like with these situations?
I will consult, those situations are, of course, the situations vary depending on which one you talk about, but I think the theme with all the situations that called for mental strength, I would consult, and that is having, the people that are closest to me, and having people that know my background, that know me as a person, not just as an athlete,
Mm,
being able to adhere to my, to me saying, hey, look, I'm having a difficult time right now. This is what's happening, and for them to be understanding and empathetic. So, definitely there's not really much you can do it, when it happens. You just have to stay calm and collected, and just, go towards the next thing, which is, in the context of football, it's okay, referees made a bad call. All right, everyone is frustrated because of the call, but what's the next important thing? It's following the next play. But,
mm,
situations where perhaps I didn't feel like I was part of the team, when I first got there, because of the language barrier, because I didn't have any friends there. Um, those situations I felt, that I needed to talk to someone. And
mm,
it's like and at the end of the day, it's funny, because nowadays, um, a lot of athletes, and even the everyday person, needs to have someone to consult, that, yeah, not now you have therapists that help you. You have um, people that are in that space to guide you, right, professionally. And I guess that was one thing that helped me persevere and overcome these instances of trouble. Consulting,
mm.
making sure that, the people around me understand the situation, and empathizing with me, for sure.
Yeah. What would you say regarding, for example, like the stigma? Like over the years, I mean, you experienced also that the stigma about mental health, particular in football, is very high. That like a lot of players, maybe they have a lot of struggle, but they can't speak because the stigma is too high because they think it's weak. What do you think about this topic, and which kind of advices you would give younger players they're struggling right now with the maybe same issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, um, the sad reality is that the stigma still exists. Especially in the sporting context, in the football world. Um, we're seeing that people are talking about their mental health. They're talking about how they go through struggles, and that
Mm,
that the players after bad training sessions or something happening, they cry and they're emotional about it. But you, unfortunately, you will not find, or at least in my experience, I haven't found that in the locker room, perhaps people are being outspoken about it. um and that is sad because I really do think that most folks, that were, I guess most folks in the teams that I was in were going through the same thing, you know.
mm,
But again, it's like you said, it's that stigma of, well, sports people, or athletes for that matter, kind of holding their worries and their concerns, and we're just gonna bottle it up. And it's like, it's perhaps like the stigma for even for the modern man, for instance, right? The
mm,
notion you shouldn't cry, shouldn't be emotional, this, that, and the other. It's very well tied to that as well. But to answer the other question, which is what advice would I give to perhaps younger people who are trying to be in a position to be successful in sport or in football? It would definitely be to really have the right people around you. Definitely, especially when hard things do happen, because as you and I were talking off record, we are social beings at the end of the day,
mm,
and having a community around you is definitely going to be vital for your mental health. When something goes wrong, when something happens, and you think that perhaps in the team context you cannot talk to your coach or your teammate about it, having your family, your friends to consult you, to empathize with you,
mm.
is by far one of the biggest strengths that I've had in my career. Um,
Who was
and
it for you?
it was my stepdad, for sure, my dad, my biological father, for sure. One of my biggest, one of my best friends. His name is Yuji. I met him in Hong Kong. He's been on top of my career and my personal life since we were 10, 11.
Mm,
Um, Javi, as well as again another great friend of mine. Um, I had another friend who's from Scotland. He was my ex agent, but we kind of parted ways, because of just different interests, and we became friends as a consequence. So he was very
mm,
much tied to my career development. So anytime something would happen, you know, um, those people would be, I guess, the first line of defense, per se.
mm,
Those people that I would call and consult, and they're, I guess, those are the things that, or those are the people that really, now that I come and think about it, those are the people that really did impact my life, in the football way, the positive way in football. Just because, there was a lot of situations in Czechia that weren't ideal, especially me going to Norway as well, weren't ideal. And they were always there to consult and to give me a different perspective. So
mm,
yeah, definitely. And of course, there's probably other people that I'm not listing, like my grandmother helped me a lot. Um, there's a couple of other people that have also been there in my career. But those are the people that probably deserve uh, deserve the flowers, man.
Mm.
And
That's powerful. That's powerful. Like I think that's also very important for younger players. They are, I think, a lot of players facing like these issues of, as we talked before, the loneliness, having like the hard time. And what I see a lot of time is that players are like, no, I have to do it on my own, and I can't talk about it because I cannot bother them. But
Mhm.
like, it's more the help for also the future way. And as you talked about, like it was so important having people around me. They supported me during these hard times. I think because if you look at the career of football, let's say it goes 35 years, right? And then you have a whole life. And if you
Mhm.
don't learn to consult people around you, how you will do it afterwards?
Mhm.
Because you will face a lot of time these struggles and this fear. And that's powerful to hear from you that like you had this environment in this time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, without those, without those folks, it would be very difficult to, if I would go back to my career, right, it would be very difficult to, to live certain situations without them. So that's definitely going to be, one advice that I would give, young athletes, young football
Mm.
players.
From your experience in playing in different cultures on different levels, which kind of leadership skills you learned for yourself and you applied them during your life, I would say.
Yeah, in football, there's always going to be a notion of really being a leader and off the field, even if you don't wear the armband. Um, and there's certain qualities that, for instance, I mean, I really started learning this when I was playing in college, and that was, the notion of being a vocal leader.
Mm,
So, typically in the field, you have to manage, what's going on really quick, and you have to communicate with your teammates appropriately. So those are perhaps one of the aspects and one of the qualities that I got to enhance. And I'll tell you here in a little bit how that applies. Things like, you know, being positive, being
mm,
being a being an inspiration, or just being positive towards your teammates, in terms of, moments where they make a mistake, or moments where, okay, we are losing, moments where, they're not having a good training session.
mm,
Being there, I think it's also a very good quality of leadership. um and definitely, over the years, I've made my mistakes. I've learned, um from, the leaders that I've had around me. um but definitely those two qualities, I would say, I'm applying to my day-to-day life, because you're going to find, let's say in the workplace, being able to communicate clearly and concisely what your expectations are,
mm,
and how you feel towards certain situations, are things that everyone must know, every employee must know, for so that we can be on the same page, and we can move forward. And, there's certain, situations, let's say in my company, where things are not, things are uncalled for, things are chaotic, there's certain things that we need to fix, and they haven't been fixed in a timely manner. Um, Situations like that, perhaps brew a little bit of negativity, being like, oh, this, that, and the other, we're not doing this fast enough. This has to get done. But, really being a little bit more positive towards a situation and being more inspiring brews, I think, more positive results, especially with the
mm,
people, right? When people know that you're motivated, that that you are positive about the situation, despite the situation not being dire or not being ideal, um, folks do start respecting you. You
mm.
know, start, they start, let's say, looking for you for advice or for, um, perspective. So
Mm,
those, yeah, positivity, um, and just management of people are definitely two things that for sure are leadership qualities, and those are things that I've had to learn, you know, over the years playing, and now I'm fortunate enough to apply to my life right now. And it's
mm,
not just at work. It's really management. With friends. It's going. Being with a romantic partner. Right. Those things are are going to be positive. Positive things, positive characteristics that will help in all aspects of your life.
okay. Yeah. That's a very interesting view and also like makes sense. Like the energy you give in, most likely you get the energy also back, like with
Yeah.
the positive energy. And yeah, what would you say, like regarding your transition? You mentioned before you had very good transition if you compare to others. How was your transition, and where are you right now, and where is the path going for you?
So I stopped playing um, the last year, 2024, and my transition was very good in the sense that um, there was a lot of people around me that wanted to help me. Right. I one of the reasons why I came here to San Antonio is because I have one of my really good friends living here, and he told me, about this city, right, where it's a thriving city. The weather is nice. It's there's a lot of opportunity for in terms of career paths, and which is part of the reason why I came here. So, having some people to help you with the transition was definitely good. And as soon as I got here, I met with certain individuals, and which is why I got the position as club director of operations in the company that I'm in right now. So um, I know that typically, perhaps some athletes when they finish their careers, maybe they take a year, sabbatical,
Mm,
maybe a couple of years to kind of figure themselves out, or perhaps they're not as fortunate to know exactly what they want to get themselves into. And
mm,
and we hear this a lot with the top stars, filing for bankruptcy, or
mm,
not knowing exactly what to do, or suffering that identity crisis, which I'm still currently struggling with, but um yeah, my transition has been very, very positive, just because of the people that have been able to help me as soon as I got out of the bubble of sport. And this is where I have to thank perhaps my family as well for convincing me to partake in my studies, and that was something that I was doing while I was playing. I was doing my master's.
mm,
Um, that is something that I'm really grateful for, and something that I now that I'm looking back, it's been very useful, especially you know looking out for jobs and career paths, and yeah, it's just been very positive. Super thankful for this transition, and now where I'm at is um yeah, I'm in this club, and for the next couple of years, what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to help this club expand itself, scale up, and one of our aspirations in the club is for us to be, one if not the best club in San Antonio, you know.
mm,
But of course, we're just getting started. We have a couple of teams in place, and we're looking to add more teams in the future. So, very, very excited for the project that I'm partaking in. And again, like we spoke in at the start, it's me being in this club is one of the many ways that I could give back to the sport,
mm,
as yeah, there's been great moments, there's been not so good moments, but the experience that I've been able to have because of football. I mean, the
Yeah,
people that the places that I've traveled to, um, you know, the happiness that I've felt, whether it is me being a kid or me, you know, um, going out and playing, it's been it's been a fun ride, and it's been definitely yeah, a game changer for me. So I have to give back. I feel like I have to give back to the sport, you know.
amazing. And also, like the beauty thing is that you have the possibility now to give back. Like, it's like just things are coming as they should come, like
Mm,
naturally. And now you are in, let's say, in the position where you see football from a different perspective,
yeah.
like not just on the field, but like from above the field, but also you're connected in the same era. That's interesting. What would you say, like, let's say your message for young players, they are pursuing their dreams, which, let's say you have one message to them, which kind of message would it be?
Man, I would say one message that I would give to all the young athletes is enjoy football. Enjoy it. Because as you mentioned in this call, the I mean, careers are not too long. They're very short. There's going to be a lot of politics, in sport, unfortunately. There's going to be talks with, difficult situations, like negotiating money, um, being able to fight for a spot in the team, politics between teammates. There's a whole lot of crap that, football comes with. But the first priority for any young player should be to enjoy it. Enjoy every
Mm,
moment. Be grateful that they get to step into a field, do what they love. Not a lot of people have that opportunity. So enjoy, be happy. If you can enjoy with the people that you love, like, your friends, enjoy with family, that's even better. But just enjoy
nice,
the
nice. Thank you.
no,
Thank you for your time, Diego.
thank you so much. This has been great, and it's been very fun, and what you're doing here, I mentioned this off the record. I think what you're doing here with, speaking to athletes, getting to know their story, I think it's fantastic, and you're definitely doing a service for those that are listening, right? These types of information you know, are gold mines, and you're making it completely accessible for people. So